Hi there, I wanted to do a video today on communication and how easy it is and why a lot of us misunderstand each other and argue so much, and we have so much disharmony in the world. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that so much of our communication these days is online. We have so much communication now in text, we have so much communication on social media, and a lot more of our communication now is through these mediums than it used to be. And I do think that although in certain ways we've progressed as a society, in certain ways I think we have backslid. And I think our communication is something that has backslid because there is more misunderstanding now than there used to be, especially when it comes to relationships and dating as well. You know, how many of them actually kind of don't even get off the starting blocks because of a misunderstanding in communication or something that happened through texting, not even in person. How many times have you had connections with people where in person you just get on amazingly, and then over text there's always an argument or you just can't get along? So there was actually a very famous study done by a professor at a California university whose name was, and I hope I don't pronounce it wrong, was Albert Mehrabian. And he came up with the theory that words alone only make up 7% of how we communicate with other people, and the rest is proportioned in 38% our tone and our voice and the way we communicate in a vocal way, and 55% is actually from completely non-verbal body language communication. Now, obviously, he didn't intend it to be literal, because that would mean that 90, without words at all, someone would be able to understand 93% of what we're trying to say, which obviously, unless we are all very, very great at telepathy, isn't going to be the case. So it's not to really be taken literal, but I think it's just to highlight how much we can miscommunicate and misunderstand a message without these other elements. Now, obviously, a lot of it depends on how you are with your words as well. So, for example, if somebody's writing a thesis, they're going to put a lot of effort into being understood and making sure that their message is clear. And the person reading the thesis is going to be quite open-minded. They're not going to be taking things personally. They're not going to be triggered. They're probably not going to have their wounds kind of hit whilst they're reading a thesis on a topic. But when we come into interpersonal relationships and we start to speak on things that can trigger another person, or we have like certain wounds around them, they can be taken completely wrong, completely out of context, and can be created into their whole monster. And I think perhaps this really is why we end up having so much miscommunication these days, and everyone's so quick to get into arguments. And this is starting to expand into the real world now, because people are so used to communicating online. And the thing is, people don't really take the time either to really try to understand one another, because there's like a defensiveness that just kicks straight in. So we could get by with words alone, I personally think, but only if everybody actually cares enough that if they come up against something and they're triggered, that rather than sort of like defend and jump into that very defensive mode, they sit back and calmly say, oh, did you mean it to come across like this, or did you mean it in this way? And that allows the other person the window to then kind of make a bridge for some of those other missing non-verbal communication skills through words. So we can still use words, in my opinion, to kind of make up for those two. It's just that we have to get past the triggers in order to do that, because we have to like have further inquiry. We have to dig deeper. We can't just... So it's a mix to me between the fact that we are using so many text-based words, but that also we are not taking the time to really understand why people are saying certain things, or to really understand their message. We just are getting defensive. So it's actually that the medium is like causing the problem, but we could fix the problem by being less defensive and not jumping to conclusions and not allowing ourselves to come from a triggered place and just sitting back, taking a bit of time and questioning the person if that is really what they mean, or, you know, ask them further questions on it. And so, yeah, how we can communicate better isn't just to get off the internet or the phones, because I do think they're a part of our lives now. It's very difficult to live a life where you're not communicating with people that you care about, or even business partners or people that you're working with, or just random people. It's very difficult not to use text-based social media or WhatsApp type style messaging to contact one another. So maybe instead of, you know, trying to change things that is kind of an immovable change right now, I think if we just started to say, well, let's go back to real life connections, it's just unrealistic. But we can all work a little bit harder at not being triggered by things and trying to come from a much more neutral space, and to try and bridge that gap by really understanding what the other person's message actually is before we jump to defend ourselves against them, or we jump to disagree with them. So I would say that's a way that we can learn to have better communication with one another that's not so argumentative and crazy. And it is difficult because, as always, it involves working on oneself, not projecting onto other people, taking responsibility for our own triggers. And this allows us to come from a different place, and it allows us to have different forms of communication that is more understood, it's more harmonious, it's more wholesome. It's not easy, but you know, it's a journey that we're all here for. So yeah, that's my views on how we can have better communication with people, and I hope everyone's having a good day. Bye.